We're back, we're talking some Final Fantasy. Got a couple bits of news regarding the franchise. First of all, the Famitsu Dengeki Game Awards happened, and Rebirth pretty much swept. It won almost every single category that it was nominated for, and it lost a surprising one. So Rebirth won Game of the Year, Most Valuable Creator, Best RPG, Best Graphics, Best Character, Tifa Lockhart, Best Voice Actor, Maya Sakamoto as Aerith, and Best Scenario. So if you guys happened to watch the previous video I did like 10 days ago or so about this upcoming Game Awards event, one of the other categories that Rebirth was nominated for was Best Music, of course. It's a Final Fantasy game, which means it lost that, which is surprising as hell to me. Look, we can argue about like Game of the Year, Best RPG of the Year, but to claim that Rebirth didn't have the best music of 2024, you're out of your fucking mind. But of course, it was good to see Rebirth win a bunch of awards, right? It won 7 out of the 8 that it was nominated for, so more or less it swept the event. And it's cool to see Tifa win Best Character, I guess. People wanted that, right? So we talked about that in the previous video. She was up against, Astro from Astrobot and like some Rise of Ronin characters, so I don't think the competition was that steep, but still, she won it. Anyways, move on from that ridiculous shit. The other bit of news we have here is that the franchise itself for Final Fantasy has now sold over 200 million copies. So it's obviously an amazing milestone to hit, right? 200 million units sold for the franchise. What's even more interesting too is that not too long ago, at the end of like September, they were just over 195 million. So in the last handful of months, they've sold another 5 million copies of games, I guess, within the franchise. Which games are those specifically? I mean, it's hard to say because there's a ton of games in the franchise, but we did have 16 come to PC around the time this report came out, roughly. And we also had, obviously, Rebirth coming to PC earlier this year, and we had like a Final Fantasy 14 expansion dropping last year. So imagine it's probably a combination of all of those that pushed sales over the last like handful of months, right? But potentially there's the Pixel Remaster collection, which we're moving on to talk about now, because apparently that series of games has sold over 5 million itself, which is pretty crazy. I'm not really sure if that's like, the Pixel Remaster collection itself sold over 5 million or like a combination of how many sales that collection got alongside the individual sales of each game within the collection. Either way, it's still a pretty insane number for a collection of relatively older games, right? Because the newest one in the collection is Final Fantasy VI, which came out in 1994. It's an almost 31-year-old game, and obviously the ones before it are even older. The fact that they could sell, a combination in some way of 5 million units is pretty crazy. It definitely shows that there's still an interest in those kinds of games, those games specifically. People talk about wanting remakes of older Final Fantasy games besides the PlayStation era ones. So there's at least a pretty good amount of interest in those older games. The fact that people are buying and wanting to play those older games on modern platforms, right? Plus, there's a lot of fans that want, a return to form when it comes to the franchise, like some sort of like ATB/turn-based combat Final Fantasy game. And this again shows there's a level of interest in those kinds of games. Whether or not there's any sort of payoff to either of those things, that remains to be seen, of course. I'd be very surprised. I don't know if we're ever going to get like another turn-based main numbered entry Final Fantasy game, right? Maybe a spin-off of sorts or some shit or whatever, but who knows? We'll see. Normally we wouldn't necessarily cover like info on the Pixel Remasters because it's just not something I talk about on the channel, but the info for that and the 200 million like total Final Fantasy sales was kind of together. There was announced together or whatever. But also I want to kind of poke fun at the fact that like this Pixel Remaster collection or whatever is kind of like outselling modern Final Fantasy games. At least to a certain degree. And for starters, of course, the Pixel Remasters are on like every goddamn platform, so that helps it a lot. But like, it took all the way until like, I think like September of 2023 for like FF7 Remake, the first game in the trilogy, to hit like 7 million, right? And in terms of Final Fantasy 16, we have a report coming out actually just a couple of days ago saying that it sold around like 3.5 million units roughly, which, it's a great game, but that's not that many sales, right? So this like collection outsold that. And then of course with Rebirth, it's been very, very vague. I don't know if we've ever had any sort of like concrete info on sales at all. There's like reports, I think like a month or two after it came out saying that it sold like 2 to 3 million, but I don't think anything official ever came out from Square, and we've obviously had nothing really major since then. Honestly, that's pretty much it for the video. It's kind of a lighter news video today, but I did want to cover this like big milestone for the franchise, reaching 200 million units sold. It's a pretty big deal. And kind of cover some other smaller bits, so it's not like a really super short video. And honestly, this video would have been out yesterday, but we had some kind of bad weather, and there was wildfires happening all over my state. There's actually one that was like southwest of the city I live in, and it was actually traveling northeast, so like right towards where we're at. So we're in kind of a voluntary evacuation alert or whatever, so we're kind of on edge for a long time, and I just didn't want to like get into making a video and then like have to like stop at any point and like evacuate the fucking city and shit. So I just kind of put off making a video yesterday for obvious reasons. I think looking into it, we had like over 100 fires, like 130 fires or some shit all over the state yesterday. It was kind of crazy, man. Everything's good here though, luckily. Unfortunate for others though. Either way though, that's the video. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Search networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @FFVIII. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Logain, or leave it like Cobain.